Hello, everybody. My name's Erin Barra, and today I'm going to talk about something called sonic prosody. So this word prosody is sort of the cornerstone and like the river that runs through all of the curriculum in the songwriting department where I teach. And I got a degree in songwriting about 13 years ago, and it was quite possibly the most unemployable decision I ever made in my entire life. But this sort of ethos of prosody is really what I believe has set me apart from a lot of my counterparts, and really is a huge factor in the success that I've seen in my career. So at its very basic definition, prosody is the action of choosing the right musical tools to convey a message to your listener. And I think it's something that we all do subconsciously, right? A simple example of this would be writing a sad song and choosing a minor key to write it in, right? Because the harmony then reflects the sadness of your emotions or your lyrics or whatever. And vice versa, if you're writing a happy song, you're going to choose a major modality. And if you decided to do the opposite, say you have something quite sad to say, but you chose a major key, then that also says something, right? These musical choices that we make really say something that words don't say, right? So that's been the entire way that I was taught to make music. As a composer, I was constantly encouraged to make these connections between lyrics, rhythms, harmonies, melodies, and whatever it was I was trying to communicate, right? And as a producer, I feel like, or an engineer, or anybody who's playing a technical role, I don't think that we're encouraged to make those same connections. And it really clicked for me. Maybe 10 years ago, I was working with an engineer, and we were working on a song of mine, and like at this point, we had done basic tracking, we had done a full day of lead vocals, we did edits, we did overdubs, and now we're in a mixing stage, right? So at least 20 hours just on this song, cumulative at this point in time. And there was a lyric that said something to the effect of like, let's do it again, right? And I said, hey, why don't we put a delay throw on this lyric so this redundant signal will be saying again, again, again. And this guy looked at me and he said, what part of the song is that in? And I was horrified because we had been working on my song for 20 hours and he had never listened to it. The whole time he didn't know what any of the words to my song were. And so after I kind of hurdled the ego portion of being offended that he didn't know my song at all, I realized that he wasn't hearing the same way that I was, and that I was actually bringing something new and interesting to this conversation from a technical standpoint that he wouldn't have done without me as the composer being there, right? So that was actually a really pivotal moment because then I decided, I have a lot to contribute to this, and I want to use these tools. I have ideas that I need to articulate and I want to make happen, so hey, I'm going to figure out how to do it. So what I'm going to do is walk you through a session of mine, which is going to outline all of these decisions and how everything from modulation, devices, automation, timbre, how these all play into my decision making in order to communicate a message to a listener. So this song is called House on Fire. And just to give you a little bit of a context, I was inspired by a friend of mine who was in an extremely tumultuous relationship. Like it was a bad situation. And I remember sitting down with them and I said, man, it's like you two are living in a house that's on fire, but you just pretend it's not on fire and you just keep sitting in the living room and going about your day, even though everything's falling apart around you. Right? And that was the moment that I said, okay, that's my song right there. That's the metaphor that's going to carry my message, is this house being on fire. So this is actually one of the easiest compositions I put together because the vision was so clear, I knew what the message was, and I had this metaphor. So to begin with, I knew I needed to start a fire. So I have this vinyl distortion here. These are just two random vinyl distortion loops, panned and drenched, right? So we've got a crackling fire to begin with, and things are burning. From there, I wanted to, and I'm going to do a lot of sampling in this song. It just randomly came to me that I wanted to use a sample from a song by a group called The Platters, the song called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes, and I thought the lyric really supported my idea. And it's this very innocent and loving sort of composition about the fire of lust and love being so powerful that you're overpowered by it, and the smoke gets in your eyes and you're not seeing clearly. So it's the intro to the song here. It's sort of setting the scene, and the sample starts very clear and visible, just like a relationship does, like shimmery and bright and exciting. And then I start to degrade the signal. I'm taking out the highs and the lows. I'm adding a lot of chorus. I'm also adding a lot of delay as well. I also have a huge strip in my screen that I can't see, so you'll have to forgive me here. But we'll start off with this song. So it's setting the scene for what's to come here. We'll call this digital foreshadowing, if you will.
They said someday you'll find all who love are blind.
So then I started with some breathing. I actually got this idea from Holly Herndon when I was at Loop in 2015. She was doing a presentation about she was talking about this intimate relationship that she has with her laptop, and she was breathing into it, and it made me really uncomfortable. And so I knew, I was like, I'm gonna do that, because that's exactly what I want my listener to feel, right? And I feel like this idea of breathing, it's like you don't know what it is. It's like, is this a sexy breathing? Is this a terrified breathing? Is this person exhausted? I can't tell. So it really was gonna tell my story nicely at this point in time. So on one side, it's just the dry signal of these breaths into a microphone of me breathing. And then on the other side, I took that same file and I sliced it up and I've resequenced it in another pattern, and I've got, it's drenched and there's a lot of delay on it as well. So I've got these two versions of the same story, if you will, the signal. And I like this idea of like ambiguity within a composition, because emotions aren't really cut and dry, right? Like love and hate are so opposite and then yet so exactly the same. So I'm trying to do this with these signals, and I'm creating a sense of foreboding of what's to come here with these breaths. Next up, I took a breakbeat, and I sliced it up. So I knew I wanted something that was like rhythmically driving, but that also felt really unstable. So in the beginning here, you'll hear the pattern is pretty forward moving and stable, and then at the end, it moves into this sort of a triplet feel. And then back again, right? So stable, unstable, driving. Again, reinforcing this message that it is I'm trying to tell to my listener. For the harmonic component of this, it was really easy to choose a choir mellotron. I feel like mellotrons have like a creepy vibe to them, or they can have like a very spooky, scary vibe. And so this is a digital emulation of a choir mellotron here. And here, right in this area, this is 3 adjacent notes. It's a E, F, and a G. So there's a lot of tension in the harmonies that I chose as well. And then here, you can see that this fader is in motion. So this is just a floating LFO object. And I have the signal controlling or modulating volume on this track. So I knew I wanted this like pulsing feeling, almost like a heart pulsing, if you will. And I'm always trying to find like new and interesting ways to do something like side chaining, which is, I guess, cliche in some ways. So I took this control signal and I just set it to a specific frequency. So it's not synced to the BPM. So it's feeling really unstable again, like reinforcing how unstable this relationship is and what's to come here. For the next portion of the porosity, I have my vocal here. So usually when I'm processing a vocal, I'm trying to get warmth, clarity, presence, like a really shimmery, nice sound. But it just didn't make sense to do that for the song. I wanted something that felt desperate and like trashed in a way. So I'm using this Real ADT VST from Waves, and it's tape, heavily overdrived, and then it's displacing the two signals as well. So it's feeling not shimmery and warm, that's for sure. For the bass, I wanted to create this sense of being stuck, right? Because I imagine we've all been in relationships that maybe we shouldn't have been in and know what that feels like. So I wanted to use just a pedal point, which is, in this case, the tonic or do of this key, and just only play that note for the entire composition, right? So in a sense, when I just play D and the harmony's moving on top of it, you get this feeling of like something's about to happen, but you're being anchored down by this one single note here. And that's what being in a bad relationship feels like to me, right? This need to move while being anchored down. And for me, this idea of a pedal point, it's like a sense of something's about to happen, right? We use them in pre-choruses a lot, or as a lead up to a cadential point where there's some sense of arrival that happens later. So I just let that ride the entire composition, I'm not joking, until the very last chorus, where I do something a little bit different here. So next up, I took another piece of that Platters song. It's a sort of a falsetto-y, very dynamic moment with the vocals saying, ah. And so I've stretched it, I've pitched it, and I've made it from something that was kind of sweet and endearing to something pretty terrifying. So again, just trying to take all this source material and do something interesting with it to continue to tell my story. So the first verse is really about denial, saying, no, the house is not on fire, right? And then in the second verse, we're saying, hey, you're the one that started this fire, right? We're moving into a place of blame. And then by the time we get to this third chorus, it's the anger, the unleashing of anger, and these are like the stages of grieving, right? So for the last chorus, I then let the bass run against the harmonic movement here. I engage an overdrive pedal, and you can sort of feel this release that's happening. So I'm gonna trigger the second pre-chorus here through this second chorus that you'll hear. What's happening?
You choke on the smoke in your eyes, running high. Someone said the house is on fire. Someone said the house is on fire, but I don't wanna see. No, I don't wanna see. No. Someone said the house is on fire. Someone said the house is on fire, but I don't wanna see. No.
And then the song's coming to a close here, so it's sort of this catching your breath from this angry moment, or this outburst, if you will, of like, you know what, that's it. I want out of this relationship. So to exit the song, I'm using the sample again from the intro, and this time it's the end of the song, and the signal goes from being highly obscured and then coming into full focus, just like a relationship does in hindsight, right? You look back and you say, wow, that makes a lot of sense in the end.
In your eyes.
So that's the end of the storytelling, and hopefully you've got some insight into what prosody is, and it inspires you to make these decisions about how you're using these digital devices, how you're using these digital tools in order to tell your story. Because that's what really music is about, feeling feelings and communicating emotions to another listener or another human being. And for me, prosody is the vehicle. Thank you very much.